Well, she's no.
Oh my God.
She's tired.
Oh, doing good. You're a grassroots, now you get to sit in the front. What's fun?
Thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
Should still use the Patterson, William Patterson, the Sheila Collins, still use the word
Yeah, no. Oh, thanks. No, don't you think people will stand there?
And does this have a functioning microphone right now? And then remind me.
What do you mean? Now, are they going to speak here or here? Well, it's up to them.
Up to them.
Okay?
Okay, if you can sit down, we're going to get started.
Hey, man. What's up?
Are we live?
How are you?
All right, we're on a Tuesday.
Because I'm not here. Yeah, right. You all right?
Kind of saving the chair for the grassroots people.
Oh.
Hi, I'm ready to introduce you. Why don't you stay right here?
Sure.
I have it ready out, and I hope it's okay. Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to this Jobs for All, Building the Movement for Full Employment, which is sponsored by the National Jobs for All Coalition and our co-sponsors, who are the Gray Panthers, the Social Democrats, Progressive Democrats of America, the People's Empowerment Coalition of Ohio, Jobs for All Campaign, and the Worcester Unemployment Action Group. Did I leave anybody out, Logan? No. All right. This morning, today, we are gathered together for 2 days of a strategy session in order to build a movement for full employment and to further the enactment of job creation legislation to reduce the huge blight of unemployment that is really with us in good times and bad. We're going to hear from what we've called the 3 pillars of job creation advocacy, or full employment advocacy. First are the progressive members of the House of Representatives who have either co-sponsored job creation legislation and now joined in the very exciting full employment caucus in the House of Representatives. That we will hear from them. We will hear also from grassroots people who have been around the country organizing the unemployed, working on behalf of the poor, and so on. We will hear from them. And we will also hear from Washington-based national organizations that promote economic justice. When he delivered what some people have called the greatest speech of the century, FDR proposed an economic bill of rights. The fundamental right, he said, is the right to living wage jobs, and it will be easier if we have that to achieve all other goals. Today, and our coalition is concerned about unemployment, as I say now, in the aftermath of the Great Recession, persisting unemployment that really affects about 23 million people recently who would like a job and can't find one or are forced to work part-time, and millions more who are working for a poverty wage, and that's not unrelated, as we know, to a loose labor market, the chronic stagnation of wages. even though in very good times, the end of the 90s, when unemployment was at a 30-year low, 13 million people fit that unemployment definition. That's nearly the size of the 6 New England states, if we want to sort of get in mind what we're talking about. Millions of people. And remember their families, too, in many cases, and the millions more who were without living wages. So today we begin this discussion, and we do hope that we can bring ourselves closer to working together effectively on behalf of full employment. You know, we revere the work ethic here in America, but there's a horrible bind that millions of people are unable to practice it. What some people have called, what I believe Martin Luther King Jr. called, the creed of our society. So we hope that our 2 days of deliberation will bring us closer to working together on behalf of giving that right, extending that right, that human right, to the millions of Americans who don't have it. It is my pleasure to begin the speeches with Josh Nasser, who is the Legislative Director of the UAW since 2011. The Legislative Department is responsible for implementing the union's policy agenda and designating the legislative strategies on labor, trade, budget, healthcare, defense, immigration, and I would hope employment.
Yes.
He was the Assistant Legislative Director of the SEIU, Service Employees International Union. And he was the VP, the Vice President for Federal Affairs at the Center for Responsible Lending. And he has congressional experience as the former legislative assistant for Representative Janice Schakowsky. So I give you Josh Nasser.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I want to thank everyone for being here. And it's really, I think, extremely important that we turn the debate around here in Washington. First of all, let me talk a minute about UAW, then I'll talk about the kind of issues that are confronting us. So, UAW, we have 1 million members, retirees, who have a long, proud history of not just fighting for our members, but fighting for a broad middle class. And what we have been really frustrated, as I know everyone in this room is, with the debate in Washington since the Great Recession. Frankly, we've been having the wrong debate. You can look at the Great Recession and then, we had the Recovery Act, but immediately after that, Washington, the whole debate centered around budget cuts, austerity, not growing the economy, not creating more jobs, but rather really ideologically driven attacks on fundamental programs such as Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, education. I could go on and on. What we've seen is that the policies that have been enacted, Budget Control Act and others, have actually have slowed down the recovery. And what we do know, and this is really clear, is that the way to deal with our fiscal long-term future is by having more people at work and having good paying jobs. And that is not where we've been focused in Washington, unfortunately. I just want to show, and I have some copies of this and I'll distribute, but I just wanted to really show you very, very quickly the correlation between the reduction in people in organized labor and the drop in middle class incomes. We see the fight for employment, and the fight for good paying jobs and the fight for organizing as all one fight here. And I think it's very important that we work together in a very deliberate way, and then we take on the misinformation. For one thing, here's another one, I'll distribute this, but you can see the effective tax rates. You hear so much about the wealthy being overtaxed. Here's the story. Tax rates for the wealthy have actually dropped precipitously over the past really 60, 70 years. And what we have seen is that in an effective way, taxes have, risen for the middle income through obviously, rising, sales tax and other mechanisms to try to make up some of the lost revenue. The bottom line is this, is that the middle class is under attack. The only way we're going to grow this economy and grow the middle class is if we have delivered policies in Washington that create jobs and good paying jobs. This is really sad. I hate to report this. I know you're going to have a lot of numbers thrown at you. But the purchasing power for the middle class has dropped $4,600 since 2007. It's going backwards. We're going backwards. The economic gains that have happened since the Great Recession have been overwhelmingly disproportionately going to the wealthy. So there's legislation out here to have a tiny tax on financial transactions. That makes all the sense in the world to create jobs, to invest in jobs. And it's ultimately going to be a win-win. So the top 1% of the population has had 95% of all income growth since 2009. That's been the policies in Washington. That's what's happened. So what we need to do is very clear. We need to invest in infrastructure. We need to invest in America so everyone so people will have more purchasing power, grow our economy, create a better future. We've done it before. This isn't impossible. But we have to take on the myth. And the myth that we hear all the time is that it's too much government spending is the problem in our economy. That statistically, it's just completely not true. And what we need to do is take that head on and show the facts. And the facts is that if you invest in the economy, you create better jobs, you protect collective bargaining rights, you expand them, then we will have a growing middle class, and we will return to the prosperity that we have had before. So none of us should accept the often heard rhetoric that the wealthy are taxed too much, and no one should accept the rhetoric that high unionization rates slows the economy and the growth in the middle class. The exact opposite is true. So we need to be bold. It's obviously work to be done at the state and local level. I know folks are here doing that. We need to keep that up as well. And just really honored to be here. UAW is a proud supporter of this effort, and we really look forward to working with everyone here for a long time. Thank you very much.
And we'll see you later at Witness Wednesday.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Josh Nasser. One of the founders of our coalition said, full employment is the worker's best friend. And surely that's true, because as labor markets tighten, of course, the first effect is greatly to increase the bargaining power of labor, both individually and collectively. Many other things happen, like wages rising. A lot of people don't like that, but there are more of us than the few who don't like that. Well, it's my great privilege to introduce Representative John Conyers Jr. I think he really needs no introduction. To those of us, does that mean I shouldn't give him an introduction? He really doesn't. He's a great beacon of light for all of us who favor progressive causes. We look to him for sponsoring really important legislation on health care and employment. He is the second longest serving incumbent member of the House of Representatives, founding member and dean of the Congressional Black Caucus, the author of the U.S. National Health Care Act, alas, that we don't have. He's a winner, along with very distinguished other Americans, of the Spingarn Medal from the National Association for the NAACP. He's the former chair of the House Judiciary Committee, important in the establishment of voting rights, and I think I need say no more.
Thank you, man.
Good to see you again.
Good job. Top of the morning, my friends. Top. Wait a minute. Maybe I should use this, huh?
Yeah.
Bottom of the morning, my friends. I don't get much mic help
You want
here.
mine? This, maybe, is it turned on? I think there's something.
Oh, maybe not.
Is it here? Yeah. It's on? You certainly can have mine.
Well, I'll just say.
I'll just move it over.
Yours wasn't working
Kind of
either.
messy.
Good to be here, and I'm hopeful that we can continue what I think is one of the most important reasons for us to be here in the Congress right now is how to reach full employment. I think creating jobs should be the number one domestic issue in the federal government. Creating a full employment economy for everybody. And so I'm very, very pleased to join you, Ms. Goldberg and Josh Nasser, for the wonderful work that's going on. I know that there are others here, Martinez and Mel, and many of you who agree with us. I just want to make a couple of points here. The first, it's past time for our government to make creating jobs and full employment a human right. That ought to be number one. Let's get down to business with this. And how do you do that? Well, you stimulate, well, you passed my bill, HR 1000, which helps create assistance for small and middle income businesses so that they can hire more people, and that the government take a hard look at how this goes on. And it's my hope that President Obama will make it in his legacy that this is where, that he goes out on a high note. He's done a couple of things. I remember he did a White House address on a young African American male unemployment, which was tremendous. But if you get up with only a little time left as being the most powerful person in the world, it looks like this could get a little bit higher on his list of his to-do list. And I want you to help me urge him on to do this, because the president can set the pace and do a lot more, but he can also leave a legacy for somebody else following him to want to build upon as well. So this is important work, and what I'm saying is that if the federal government gets behind it and recognizes it as a human right, then we'll be able to move forward the way I'd like to see us do it. Now, how do you make a nation a full employment society? Well, you get the Congress to start amplifying this issue as well. I mean, it's not, we don't ask what is the White House doing about it. The question is, what are we doing about it? And that's why we're here today. I am proud to say we've got 57 members supporting H.R. 1000, but that's what we had last week. We need to get some more members on there. I should be reporting every week that we picked up 2 or 3 or 4 more members as this thing moves forward. And I think we have to work on that in some of our committees and after the panel to make sure that that happens. Now, there's one thing that always tells us how we're doing, and that is what's income inequality like, and it's getting worse. The huge number of people who are living, a growing number, that are living below the poverty line, and then they're the top percentage in which their wealth keeps growing, and it's there is inequality that is so gross that it's hard to consider this a democracy. How can we have a democracy where more and more of the people are not able to earn a living to keep themselves out of poverty, and more people are becoming, as they work, are still in poverty and can't get out of poverty? So we've got a real issue there to deal with. And so this discussion and action boils down to a couple of simple, whose side are you on? It's either investment or austerity. And when you get to going through all of the issues, if you're not for investment, then without even admitting it, you're for austerity. And austerity is not the way to go. And so we have to find a way to get this out. And one of the things that we're looking forward to, and I've got a number of my staff and former staff here, is how do we get this message out to make political sense so that we get people moving on it? After all, we're not a tiny minority. In 2226, they come and talk to each other and make ourselves feel good. The issue is there's way, way more of us than there are of them. But there's no accounting in the political system, so people keep coming to this branch of government. They may have talked about it a little bit before they got here, and then they get here and they're not against it, but they're just not doing anything for it. We've got to be the ones that put a tack in the seat or give them a jab in the ribs and start getting something going here. That's what we need. We need more investment, more job creation, not this silent austerity business. It means protecting workers when they fall on a hard time. I never imagined that even conservatives wouldn't want to extend unemployment compensation when their own constituents are getting it in the neck. That the layoffs come across the board. They come everywhere. And so that is really shocking to me. And so I'm hopeful that we can begin to do something where everybody has a job or gets the training to get a job. That is what we want to do. That's what HR 1000 does. And I think we can get there in a big way. Now, we've been through these, in conclusion, these dips of unemployment, and then employment, and then the downturn, and then a depression, then you come out of it. The one thing that I consider very critical that I never forget is that we want full employment without having a war. No. There are a lot of, there's a great way to get full employment is go out and start involving ourselves in every issue that comes along where there's military action suggested or demanded. Conservatives always want to go out and teach somebody a lesson somewhere in the world. And yes, we're the most powerful. Yes, we have more military, nuclear, and atomic. But that's not what this is about. We want to globalize this too, because it's very important. I don't know if you've noticed, as I have, that the continent of Africa is getting a lot more attention because they're beginning to say, hey, what about us? And globally, most countries have been coming in, getting their, exporting their minerals and their wealth and their natural resources. And that's what we want to try to end. So I join you as a totally committed member of Congress. And what I want to do is get some meetings like this going on around the country. I mean, look, this isn't just for the Hill, you know, we're inside it. We want to get this on the outside, and I want to help you do it. Thanks so much.
I forgot to mention that greetings were sent to you, Mr. Conyers, from some of the people. So I start over again. I forgot to mention that greetings were sent to you, Mr. Conyers, for some of the people now in our coalition who worked with you on the original Humphrey Hawkins in the 70s, Helen Ginsberg being one, a couple of others. Okay, I've come upon our field coordinator, our outreach coordinator, Logan Martinez, who is from Dayton, Ohio, who's had a great hand in organizing this meeting. And I would like him to introduce the people here from other places off the Hill. I'm from off the Hill, by the way, Connecticut.
All right, I'm just going to have people stand. I don't know if you can hear me.
You want to use this, Logan?
Oh, there you go. Okay, could the people from around the country, we got people from Massachusetts, Michigan, Memphis, Tennessee, union folks, stand up, please. Just stand up. But, come forward. There's seats up front here, so let's sit down. Everybody can. Let's try to sit down. We have a network of people working on jobs, primarily in the eastern part of the country. Unemployment, as people saw last month's figures, supposedly close to 280,000 jobs were created. And you got to realize that every month the workforce grows at 130,000. And so to really get a handle on the real level of unemployment, you have to start by subtracting that each month from the number of jobs created, because that's the young people coming into the jobs market for the first time. And on our website, if you go to our website, we monthly update the true level of unemployment. And it's still, if you count what we call the hidden unemployed, people who have given up looking, which is a huge number of the long-term unemployed, and part-time workers, people who would like to have full-time work and are trying to scrape by on minimum wage jobs. There's 30 million people working part-time. 8 million of those people want full-time work. They can't survive. And we have people living in automobiles and on the side of the road, working. They're counted in the workforce, but they can't make ends meet, they haven't pay rent, much less pay, the utilities and everything else. And so we estimate, based on the Labor Department figures, there's 23 million unemployed and underemployed people this month. And so the John Conyers bill, H.R. 1000, is the first step towards full employment. There's a package of jobs bills that we're supporting, but we estimate that that bill will create 4 to 5 million good-paying jobs over the first 2 years. And that would make a huge dent, but that wouldn't eliminate unemployment. And so the challenge for us is huge. You see it in the press all over the country that there's this, we're turning the corner, according to the New York Times, on unemployment. Yet, as people know, they won't even pass unemployment benefits. We've lost 6 months of unemployment benefits here since the beginning of the year. 3 million people. They've lost their house. They're being evicted from their apartments. They're losing their cars. Thousands of people lose their cars each week because they've lost their unemployment benefits. And so the crisis has not passed. And the Jobs for All Coalition and the other groups that have been working on this, we're into building a new network in this country that demands a job for everyone. We're the richest, most powerful, technologically the most advanced country in the planet, yet we can't even address. They won't even talk about creating jobs here. And so we're going to put this on the front burner. We're going to go this fall and have actions all over the country demanding jobs and a safety net to protect people while they're looking for work. And we're going to turn this around. We need everybody's help here to make it happen. For the Congress representatives that are here, we need to work with the groups in your district. I ran into my congressman out here in the hall, Mike Turner, and he's a moderate Republican. But would he talk about unemployment benefits? No, not at all. Does he talk about jobs? Hell no. And we have huge amount of unemployment. Huge. We lost 5 divisions of General Motors. Our town is a ghost town in some neighborhoods. And so we need everyone's help. Let's put our back to the bone, or back to the wheel, and let's make it happen. Salute everybody here, and let's make it happen.
Hear me now? Oh, thank you, Logan. I think it's really important. Minorities are disproportionately affected by unemployment, always consistently, in the case of African Americans, twice. But it is not only a minority issue. There are more unemployed whites than minorities combined. And I think it's really important to recognize both very much. So full employment is really everyone's right. I recently spoke about it being a woman's right. More daycare, more women going to work, a fuller labor market, and it's not so easy to invoke that motherhood penalty because there aren't so many people standing in line for the job that the single mother didn't get. So let us move on then. I would like to welcome Ms. Harriet Fulbright. She's the former Senator Fulbright's wife and in charge of the director of the Fulbright Foundation. Is she here?
Stand up there. So
So Thank you for being here. Well, it is now my pleasure to introduce my colleague who has taught me a very great deal about full employment, about human rights. He's Professor Philip Harvey, Professor of Law and Economics at Rutgers University Law School, author in the late 80s already of really part of the first group that began to revive the interest in full employment that was very high, and really we even got a bill through the Senate in the 1940s, only to lose it in the House. But Phil is part of the revival of young scholars' interest in full employment. He wrote Securing the Right to Full Employment, Social Welfare Policy and the Unemployed in the United States in 1989. He's the author of numerous articles on human rights and employment as a foremost right. Really a leading scholar of New Deal employment programs. And here I think I want to put in a little plug for our book, which is called When Government Helped, Learning from the Successes and Failures of the New Deal, in which Philip Harvey writes the New Deal's direct job creation strategy. Now Phil is going to talk about direct job creation and about our definition of full employment, which is a very full one, and really discuss, and I think he will probably discuss later in greater detail this afternoon, more about the legislation that is before us. And Phil, among other things, had a hand in crafting both H.R. 1000 and Representative Schakowsky's Restore the American Dream Act. So, my colleague and teacher, Phil.
Okay, this afternoon I'll be providing a briefing on the features and projected impact of the job creation bills that members of the Full Employment Caucus are sponsoring in the current Congress. But this morning I want to just highlight 3 quick points that I think will be helpful in guiding our discussion of job creation initiatives over the next 2 days. And for those who prefer to read than listen, I've listed the 3 points over there, but the reason I wanted the visuals is because a little later I'm going to show you a cartoon, and not being Fiorello LaGuardia, I can't talk them. So the first point I want to make is that it's important to be clear about what we mean by full employment. The second is that achieving the kind of full employment we want will require a different job creation strategy than progressives are accustomed to advocating, but it's a strategy, fortunately, that members of the Congressional Full Employment Caucus have adopted as the foundation of their legislative proposals. And my third point is that this strategy is not only capable of achieving genuine full employment, it would also provide crucial support for a host of other progressive reforms. So first, why is it important to be clear about what we mean by full employment? The answer is because the hitherto common understanding of the full employment goal has been muddied in recent years in ways that could have a significant effect on policy responses to the problem of unemployment. The conception of full employment that progressives embraced in the early 1940s as the foundation of their post-World War II reform agenda equated it with the realization of what Franklin Roosevelt referred to as the right to work, a human right to work. Not the anti-union slogan that right-wingers embraced in a conscious attempt to steal Roosevelt's thunder, but the right of all job seekers to decent employment, the basic requirement for which is the availability of enough jobs to provide decent work for everyone who wants it. Now, until the 1970s, this is what almost everyone understood full employment to mean. But in recent years, this understanding has been eroded by the tendency for professional economists, including, sadly, many who are otherwise staunchly progressive, to use the term to describe the lowest level of unemployment that is simultaneously high enough to keep inflation in check, a target rate of unemployment that progressive economists generally peg at 4 or 5%. The problem is that with unemployment in the 4 to 5% range, the economy does not come close to providing enough jobs to provide work for everyone who wants it. At the end of 2000, when the U.S. unemployment rate dipped to 3.9%, below 4% for the first time in almost 30 years, there were still almost 8 million fewer job openings in the economy than the combined number of officially unemployed workers, jobless workers who wanted work but were not counted as unemployed, and part-time workers who employed part-time but wanted full-time jobs. How low does the unemployment rate have to be driven to provide work for everyone who wants it? Based on past experience, including recent experience in regional labor markets in the United States, we know that when jobs are truly plentiful, the unemployment rate falls to the 1 to 2% level. That's what genuine full employment looks like. But why quibble over 2 or 3 percentage points of unemployment? To answer that question, I'll ask another. And here is my visual. Why is this little girl crying? Is it because she was too slow to grab a seat when she had the chance? Or because a bigger child pushed her out of the way? Or is it because there aren't enough chairs for everyone to sit down? What we can say with certainty is that the number of children left standing in a game of musical chairs is wholly dependent on how many fewer seats there are than children. But who suffers that fate depends on the kind of factors I listed first: the relative speed of the players and their aggressiveness in grabbing vacant seats. The same is true of the labor market. The number of people who suffer unemployment depends entirely on the size of the economy's job deficit. But the identity of the workers who suffer the burden of that shortage depends on the advantages they enjoy or the disadvantages from which they suffer in their pursuit of work. For policymakers, this distinction is vitally important. Helping individual workers overcome their disadvantages undoubtedly helps them, but it merely shifts the burden of joblessness to someone else's shoulders, and that person likely suffers from very similar disadvantages. In short, it's not going to solve the problem of unemployment, just move it around among the population of disadvantaged workers. That's why a 2 or 3 percentage point shortage of jobs does matter, because it can and does translate into astronomical unemployment rates for disadvantaged workers. To solve the problem of unemployment and prevent it from unfairly burdening the lives of the most vulnerable among us, it's not enough to fight for equal employment opportunity. We have to close the economy's job gap. Now, my second point is more upbeat, and that is, it is possible to achieve genuine full employment, but it will require a different strategy from the one on which progressives customarily rely. I've spent the past 30 years studying this problem, and I'm absolutely convinced the answer to it resides in the direct job creation strategy developed and tested by New Deal progressives in programs like the Work Progress Administration, the WPA, and the Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC, and updated for use today in bills sponsored by members of the Congressional Full Employment Caucus. The hallmark of this strategy is its reliance on direct job creation by government to fill the economy's fluctuating job gap, not with permanent jobs, but with good quality temporary jobs that unemployed workers can occupy until such time as their services are needed by private or regular public sector employers. For reasons I will not attempt to go into this morning, this strategy can be pursued without aggravating the inflationary tendencies that prevent conventional stimulus measures from achieving genuine full employment. Moreover, it also possesses distinct advantages as a job creation strategy even when inflation is not a problem during recessions. It creates more jobs per dollar of stimulus spending than conventional stimulus measures. It creates those jobs more quickly. It distributes them more fairly to all jobless workers, particularly disadvantaged workers who tend to be the last served by conventional stimulus measures, and it delivers a faster and more effective boost to the private sector as well. Moreover, it is better suited than conventional stimulus strategies for implementation at the local level, which means progressives can pursue the strategy in localities where their political influence is strong without having to wait until they have won power at the national level. Finally, the third point I want to make concerns a final feature of the direct job creation strategy that should commend it to progressives, even if their advocacy focuses on issues other than unemployment. I'm referring to the strategy's natural ability to address social problems in addition to unemployment. Consider a couple of examples drawn from conversations I have had the past couple of weeks with people attending these meetings. Tell me your own priorities, and I'm confident a full employment initiative based on the direct job creation strategy could help achieve them as well. One of the groups represented here is the Gray Panthers, who not only are strong advocates of full employment, but also promote increased investment in children. Our Gray Panther partners in Austin, Texas, are particularly interested in expanding the availability of child care and early childhood education to make it easier for the parents of young children, especially single parents, to pursue and keep employment. The direct job creation strategy is naturally well suited to fill this need, and thereby provides three social benefits for the price of one: creating jobs for the unemployed workers, funding a dramatic expansion in child care and early childhood education programs, and delivering an economic stimulus to the private sector by increasing the number of employed workers with money to spend at a time when the economy is still struggling to revive from the Great Recession. My second example involves an initiative sponsored by Reverend Rod Sadler, who you're going to hear from later this morning. He's trying to build support in Charlotte, North Carolina, for a job training program targeting disadvantaged workers designed by the Center for Community Change. The program would pay the first 6 months' wages of hard-to-employ job seekers at $10 per hour in exchange for a commitment from the businesses that employ them to provide on-the-job training to the program participants and continue to employment at the same wage for at least 6 months after their 6-month subsidy is exhausted. Paid job training for disadvantaged workers is something else the direct job creation strategy can easily fund. But remember what I said earlier about the musical chairs effect. While the focus of this initiative appears to be on job training rather than job creation, it actually does both by creating paid on-the-job training slots that otherwise would not exist. That's a combination perfectly suited for the strategy as the Civilian Conservation Corps demonstrated in the 1930s. My point is a simple one. The direct job creation strategy may be designed to solve the problem of unemployment, but it would do so in a way that would materially advance virtually every other progressive reform effort. This is why the achievement of full employment via the direct job creation strategy should be on every progressive organization's reform agenda. It's not because securing the right to work is more important in and of itself than other progressive reforms. It's because, as Franklin Roosevelt explained, it is the right, quote, on which the fulfillment of the others in large part depends. That's the basis for the partnership in promoting full employment that we hope this meeting will facilitate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Phil. It's now my privilege to introduce Representative Marcy Chapter. And among the, oh, sorry. Do I have to repeat myself? I guess I do. Is it on again now? Sorry. Thank you very much, Phil. Harvey. It's my privilege now to introduce Representative Marcy Chapter of Ohio. As a leader of the Full Employment Caucus, Representative Chapter has championed the need for job creation through caucus efforts, as well as her bill to revive the Civilian Conservation Corps, which Philip Harvey just mentioned, and which we need to deal with a time of climate crisis, but not an international one, and we probably need it even more now than we did then. She's also a co-sponsor of H.R. 1000 and numerous other job-creating legislation, and she is dedicated to rebuilding and modernizing America's infrastructure, transportation, and energy systems. She's been representing Northeast Ohio for 30 years, and she's had a firsthand knowledge of the devastating impact of free trade arrangements on U.S. manufacturing, and hence she has led the fight to bring those jobs back home. We appreciate her dedication and work to give every American access to quality employment, and welcome her here today to give remarks on the importance of job creation and building a movement to push for full employment.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. It's a great honor for me to join my beloved colleague John Conyers of our sister state of Michigan, and also Barbara Lee and Frederica Wilson in our common efforts to employ all of America. Thank you for being in the right place on the right issue. Jan, I didn't see Jan. Jan, thank you so much. Talk about a leader from the important state of Illinois who has special connections that can help us in our common efforts. I wanted to, and Trudy, thank you so very much for putting this program together and hosting this program. I know you will hear from many knowledgeable people today, and perhaps what I can focus on, help you focus on, is achievable results in the political environment in which we are working. Today, for example, sometime in the next 2 days, we will have an amendment on the floor, which I will oppose. That will be an amendment to an energy and water bill that will try to eliminate something called Davis-Bacon in project agreements. So we work in an environment where there are many forces that work inside this chamber to take away middle-class wages and middle-class jobs for the American people. And it's a rather tough pull. But I would like to focus on a couple points maybe others haven't mentioned to help us put our thinking in a broad context. One is, for almost a quarter century now, America has hemorrhaged jobs to other countries. And all you have to do is travel. One example, any of you old enough to remember the logo Maytag? Maytag made washing machines, among other things, in a town called Newton, Iowa. And Fred Maytag founded the company. He's actually buried looking over the town, and his great creation, a great American product, a quality product that was in almost every American household. There was even an ad on TV that would say the Maytag repairman was sleeping because there were no brakes in people's washing machines. They functioned so well. It was America at its best. That company no longer exists in Newton, Iowa, but if you travel south of the border to Monterrey, Mexico, you will find a very large complex that washing machines are made at, and you will see several brands, including Maytag. And if you buy a Maytag today, you will find that the edges of the covering, cut your finger, the door doesn't work as well. Not only have we lost the production, we have lost the quality. And that has happened in product after product after product. I just left my home in Ohio the other day. The back door, the covering on the lock fell off. It's a fairly new lock. I thought, here we go, the whole country's falling apart. We've lost the our companies have lost the commitment to quality and to manufacturing here at home. But cumulatively, over the last 25 years, if one looks at the trade deficit numbers for the country, and last year, I think it was around $400 to $500 billion of imports in, dwarfing our exports out. You can take $500 billion of math. For each $1 billion of imports versus exports, multiply that number times 9,000 lost American jobs. Just the trade deficit from last year cost us 5.8 million jobs in this country. And so an interesting math assignment would be to take the trade deficit for each of the last 25 years, and it's significant, Add those totals up and then multiply it times 9,000 lost jobs. Or if you think, well, maybe it didn't cost us 9,000 jobs, maybe only 5,000 jobs for each $1 billion of trade deficit. Add those numbers up. When you look at the numbers, you will fall off your chair. And you will find where these jobs have been displaced. And then for many of you, particularly the religious community leaders who have traveled to other places, and you've gone to see where those workers in these other countries work and live, you will never forget the experience. Jan Schakowsky and I actually traveled to Mexico together, and we saw the squatter communities where people were living that were working in these transplant companies from around the world, and then those goods being exported to us and other countries. It's really ugly. It is really an ugly system. And as I watch those children being trafficked across our border from Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, I've welcomed workers from El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala to my home community of Toledo, where they tell us they're paid 10 cents to make a t-shirt, and then they find the t-shirt for sale in our community for $20. And they're just stunned. All right. So we have this is a new issue for America. This didn't exist after World War II. It started about 1975. Study the trade deficit, its components, which countries those are associated with, and you'll begin to understand the economic challenge that we face. The job loss has been real, significant, and continuing. We are finding our middle class shrinking and the ranks of the poor growing. And you are caring Americans, and you know something's wrong in a major way, and that's why you're here today. And thank you for coming. In terms of the political environment we are working in, where do I see roads that we can walk down? I think that we have to look at the bills that are moving and tailor amendments and proposals to focus on the full employment question in ways that may be achievable. What do I mean? Today, the bill that I will bring to the floor with my Republican counterpart deals with the funding of many parts of our Energy Department and our Army Corps of Engineers. Let me just give you one number in that bill. We have a backlog of Army Corps of Engineer projects of $60 billion. In the bill we will bring to the floor today, and that's infrastructure, $60 billion. We can't fund the $60 billion. All we were able to get into the bill was about $1 billion more, $954 million exactly, over last year to take care of port projects, to take care of water projects that are already ongoing. They're being built. But imagine if we were to have amendments offered to the bill that dealt with employment. They won't pass in the House in this environment, but using that opportunity to point to the $60 billion of infrastructure backlogged in that bill and talk about jobs and full employment. You will find the debate today will not focus on that. It'll be a much more arcane debate. But the reality is, even half of that $60 billion, if we had a $30 billion full employment program tailored around the Army Corps of Engineer budget, to have the Army Corps stage projects in different places in our country to employ and train from the ranks of the unemployed, what a great debate that would be. But right now, we're not organized as a caucus to do that. But that is the purpose of this caucus, to think about that. If we look at another bill, the defense bill, which is the largest bill that comes through the Congress, if you look at the funding for defense environmental cleanup, it is staggering. The amount of waste in this country in places that have to be cleaned up. And there are funds buried in that bill to do that. Not sufficient funds, but more funds than exist in most other bills in the entire Congress. And one could begin to think about how to tailor the environmental cleanup projects that are in the defense bill, working with the Department of Defense, our Guard and Reserve units locally, to stage projects engaging the civilian population. So I think we have to drill down into some of the bills that come before us and start thinking hard about how to tailor them. The prior professor talked about the Older Americans Act and the Gray Panthers who are here. I have long believed, though that is not my subcommittee or full committee, that the Older Americans Act and the employment programs for those over 55, we need to have a proposal we all agree on and move forward with that, whether it's child care, whether it's literacy programs, and plus up that 55, we have so many workers, as you well know, over the age of 50, not just 55, who will never go back to the jobs that they had. And we need to have a proposal that moves forward in a big way, and let people vote against it if they want, but engage all of our major coalitions that Jan Schakowsky helps to lead, along with Doris Matsui in this Congress, to focus on the employment question for that segment of the workforce. It's very hard to vote against senior citizens in this country, for good reason. They built it. And we owe them big time. And so I think that as these bills move to the floor, we need to be very focused. We need to look at the employment output we want, and we need to create legislative initiatives we all support and move forward with a discrete number of those. The other bills that I wanted to draw your attention to at the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Interior, because of climate change and what has happened with invasive species in this country, we are losing tens of millions of trees. You might say, well, trees, what does that have to do with anything, you know? But if you look at Michigan or you look at Ohio, we are losing a minimum of 10% of our tree cover. This means we don't get as much oxygen produced in the atmosphere. And if you look at urban areas versus rural areas, one of the reasons we have higher rates of cancer in urban areas and respiratory conditions and so forth is because we don't have as many trees producing oxygen and filtering the air. It actually is a major urban-rural divide and the way that cities were built in the last century. And we have a massive tree planting challenge ahead of the country. As the Department of Interior bills come before us and the Department of Agriculture bills come before us, generally speaking, the Forestry Service and Interior, you know, they're the folks they call the parkies. You know, they're out there in the mountain ranges and they're out there, you know, in the places a lot of people are afraid to go. But we need to think about trees where people live and help our mayors, help our local park systems, a massive national tree planting program, and that's why we've proposed a Civilian Conservation Corps bill. Makes a lot of sense in terms of what we are facing in this country. And frankly, from a scientific standpoint, with climate change, even the area I live in, which is a major agricultural producing region, the climate zones have moved north. So what used to be Tennessee climate is now Cleveland, Toledo, Detroit climate. And so much is changing. Certain trees are dying, certain species are coming in, we've got invasive species, there's all kinds of issues related to the ecosystems in which we are living, the kinds of trees that will live there in the future. This could be a major job creation program that we could couple training with that. So I'm saying to you, despite the fact that we have a lot of resistance by some, we have opportunities if we carefully target our efforts that I think could make a real difference and at least create the climate for debate here that would focus on the full employment issue. Finally, the last thing I want to say relates to what can happen by private lawyers on the outside as a result of the 2008 financial collapse. America has not been given justice. Since World War II, as a result of that 2008 housing market collapse, securitization of the mortgage instrument, triggered by an oil price rise, by the way. If you look back at $4.12 gasoline back in 2008, every time we go over $4, we trigger another recession in this country. But if you look at the securitization instrument and the derivatives that went with it, the African American population of our country lost well over a third of its accumulated equity built up since World War II. It's staggering. For the Hispanic community, it was a little bit less. but it was profound. You almost don't see many people writing about it, and the Caucasian community lost about 12% of its accumulated equity. Some of the cases that have come forward have begun to hold J.P. Morgan Chase accountable, Wells Fargo accountable. We haven't begun to scratch the surface on returning some of those dollars back to the communities that have been harmed. Some of you may be in a position to initiate some of those cases. Put a coalition together, put your think tanks together. The lawyer who just spoke was from Rutgers Law School. We need those smart lawyers on the outside because the American people know they were taken to the cleaners. At the local level, we have vacancies all across the country. We have homes not being taken care of. The big 6 banks that control most of the money in this country, the servicers that they have hired, have not treated our communities with respect. And we can find some of the money we need in their accounts. But it's going to require smart lawyers to help us put those cases together and go through property records back home and working with our land banks and some of the instrumentalities that have been set up in our local communities. So I thank you for giving me a few moments to talk with you. Some of the dollars we need for employment, coupling, imagine if we could get millions of dollars back to our communities through court cases, and then we couple our job training programs and our youth build programs with some of those, what we could do across urban America. And the final thing I will say, when I was first elected, in many of the communities I represent, we had people who needed housing, and we had structures that were dilapidated. And I created a program we called Homemakers, and we actually trained women in the construction trades to try to fix up homes in the cities that I represented. We never got much help from the federal government. Federal government, HUD has not been very innovative. And what I found is that one of the reasons some of these neighborhoods look the way they do is because the people in those neighborhoods don't have the skills to repair them. So it's more than the housing, it's the skills. How do we seed skills in neighborhoods that don't have them? How do we do that? Maybe we need some pilot projects to really take Youth Build and some of the other programs we've had over the years and kind of polish them a little bit and make them work for the housing market, which is so desperately in need of a lift up from coast to coast. And when people say, oh, the federal government can't do anything, we don't need the government. Well, I can tell you, coming from Northern Ohio, and I'm sure John Conyers agrees with me and Jan Schakowsky as well, we as members were part of a coalition of 242 or 243 people that voted for the reinvestment in the automotive industry of America. And over 200 of our colleagues did not vote for that, or 187 or whatever it was. I can tell you the federal government can do things. And if it were not for an automotive industry that is chugging away right now, this country would have double the rate of unemployment or greater than we do today. So the federal government can make a huge difference when it targets, when it focuses, and when it says these jobs are important to America. We can make it happen. Thank you for being part of a coalition of change.
This is an opportune time to thank Jenny Carino, the legislative director from this chapter, who has done an enormous amount, has helped us greatly in planning this meeting. But when she came to Representative Conyers before, following the initial work of Joel Siegel, we knew that full employment was going to move onto the map. And so we're very, very grateful for that. The legislative assistant in Representative Conyers' office for very able help and for carrying on the work that Jenny began. It is now my privilege to introduce Representative Janice Schakowsky, also a leader in the Full Employment Caucus, a co-signer of H.R. 1000, and the author of her bill, which I'm sure she will tell you more about. I've already alluded to it, the Emergency Jobs to Restore the American Dream Act. Representative Schakowsky doesn't know this, but I kind of met her a long time ago. We were both outside of the World Trade Center, and we were protesting privatization of Social Security by the elite on top who were having lunch. And I was very impressed that this representative from Illinois was out there with labor, and we were out there protesting, and because we not only believe in Social Security, but we believe that Social Security is an important employment right, and actually the best insurance for Social Security is as many people working as possible paying taxes and not needing to draw benefits either early or as disabled people. So, Representative Schakowsky.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to be very brief. I really just want to make 2 points, but first let me really thank my dear colleague John Conyers for always being in the front of the line on all the important issues, and Trudy Goldberg for leadership in making this happen, the National Jobs for All Coalition. So point number one, and I would encourage you, I think he's going to be here later, to read my husband, Robert Creamer's HuffPost today, Why Collective Bargaining is a Fundamental Human Right. That the war on organized labor, led by Wall Street, has been a major problem for certainly good jobs and adequate income in this country, and that we need to be talking union. When we create jobs right now, the jobs that people have lost are much better paying than the jobs that people are getting right now, and it's we can reverse this. There are those who say, oh, unions are so 20th century. We don't need them anymore. Anybody who belongs to a union knows the incredible bonus that you get in your paycheck for being part of that union. We're seeing the Supreme Court make bad decisions on that, and we need to be talking union. The other point I wanted to make really reinforces what Professor Harvey was talking about, that, you know, if we want jobs, we should create them. We should just create them. And we can do that. We have done that. Here's the letter that I received from a constituent calling for a 21st century world work progress administration, and he wrote, quote, such a program would give us a much needed booster shot to the labor market, improve U.S. infrastructure and manufacturing, and set the stage for economic growth well into the future. We did it once, let's do it now. So I have a piece of legislation. The president did too, by the way, the American Jobs Act. Mine is the Emergency Jobs to Restore the American Dream Act. HR 1617 to jumpstart the economy would create 2.2 million additional good-paying jobs over the next 2 years. Would create 400,000 construction jobs, 250,000 maintenance jobs, 300,000 teaching jobs, 100,000 Head Start jobs in our schools, would put 40,000 additional police officers, 12,000 more firefighters on our streets, would add 250,000 work-study jobs for college students to help make good education more affordable, would support 40,000 more healthcare providers, especially in underserved rural and urban areas, would put 750,000 people to work, revitalizing our communities, from addressing urban blight, building affordable housing, to making buildings more energy efficient, and it would create, as I said, about 2.2 million jobs that would expand the workforce and encourage additional spending on things like groceries, clothing, even an occasional vacation. You know, 40% of our workforce doesn't get 1 day of paid leave, not one. And if you're in a minimum wage job, 80% of those workers don't get 1 day. 2/3, by the way, of those minimum wage workers are women, some getting the tip wages, a minimum wage of $2.13 an hour. So, you know, what we hear, oh, well, we simply can't afford to do that. And that is just the most outrageous thing right now. Our country has never been richer, ever been richer. We're the richest country in the world at the richest point in our history. Our personal wealth in this country, aggregate, $81.8 trillion. However, we have 8 Americans who earned at least $10 billion last year. I'm not talking about wealth. I'm talking about income here. $10 billion is as much as almost 200,000 Americans earn in a year. So, we're looking at corporations, 26 Fortune 500 companies that paid nothing in taxes from 2008 to 2012. Some of them got rebates from the government, billions of dollars. We have companies like Apple, the nation's most profitable tech company, dodged taxes on about $74 billion in earnings for 4 years by manipulating foreign tax shelters and loopholes. So, tax the rich is the right thing to do. I'm sorry, that's just it. I'm not afraid to say it. We should tax the rich. We also have done that before. I have legislation that says, let's start creating more tax brackets. Right now the highest tax bracket is what, $450,000? If you make $450 million, your tax rate is the same. Of course, if you make more than $450 million, you're probably paying a much lower tax rate because those dividends and capital gains taxes are taxed less than work. We don't respect work in this country. So there is plenty that we could be doing right now. We have the money. We should be spending the money to create good jobs, which creates a healthy economy. Even if you don't care about those people that are unemployed and cut off of their unemployment insurance right now. Even if you don't care about that, what we're doing right now is very dangerous for our economy. When I get the guts to look at Thomas Piketty's book, big book, Capital, all the data is there. We all know it, or should know it right now. So that's it. Create jobs, support unions, tax the rich. That's my formula. Thank you.
Favorite book of Charles Dickens. The little girl is in Hard Times. Little girl is in the classroom and she's asked, "Is this a prosperous nation?" And she's supposed to, of course, talk about what was in the GDP. And she said, "Well, I'd have to know who got the money and whether I got it." Okay. I said that we had 3 pillars of job creation advocacy, and now we want to hear from, we've heard wonderfully from the first pillar that I mentioned, the progressives in the Congress, and now I want to move again back to labor, and I want to introduce Debbie Ceretti, who's the Executive Vice President of the American Postal Workers Union. She is involved in the union's campaigns and assists officers at the national, state, and local level. So I give you Ms. Reddy. Am I saying it right?
Yes, you are perfect. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for allowing me to be here. I'm with the American Postal Workers Union, and we are definitely wanting to provide decent jobs for all within the Postal Service. And of course, we have gone through some bad times lately. And I'm newly elected. I just got in November of 2013. A lot of people don't think unions are democratic, but believe me, my union members voted for a whole new group to come in because they felt that they weren't active enough in the past. And we were losing jobs. We were losing full-time jobs. We have a 3-tier system, so we're in the battle zone. We're the middle class jobs that are now, starting to dissipate. We have a postmaster general who's after the postal workers. He's planning on privatizing, and he's done major things to affect our jobs. And we have to also try to support the jobs that we do have, and we also need to all work together. One of the things that the Postmaster General recently came out with last week is that he's destroying our service through consolidations and closures of post offices and plants. The whole point of why we have a postal service is because we have a constitution. The Constitution says that we're supposed to have a postal service that will bind the nation together. And just on the issue of coalition movement, you've got to use the postal service. We have a post office in every community. We've got to start utilizing those communities to get involved with postal employees and with unions and with other organizations that we have out there that have been only working alone. We haven't been working together. So one of the things that I wanted to bring up is that a lot of times people look at unions and they say, oh my God, they're the ones who've helped us to lose jobs because they ask for too many rights and benefits and wages. That really isn't true. Unions are the workers. There's nobody else but the workers. We organize the unions across the country so that we can provide living wages, benefits, rights that everybody should have, and that companies should provide, because after all, we're the ones that work for them, and that we have provided them the monies and the profits that they keep making, and they keep going higher and higher, but not wanting to give to the people below that worked and did the job. So definitely we have to try to get together with the unions as well. So I don't want you guys to leave the unions out. There's a few unions that are starting to get very actively involved, and we realize that we have to set up these coalitions nationwide in order to be able to get through those congressional members that just don't seem to get it and what they should be doing in Congress. One of the things that I wanted to bring out also is that many workers, and some of those that are unemployed, are unbanked. Unbanked meaning that they can't afford to have a bank account because of all the fees, the loans, the costs, the percentages that have gone up. And we, as the American Postal Workers Union, and with our other sister unions, are planning on pushing our Postmaster General to do postal banking. We used to have it 50 years ago. And what it would do to help people in the inner city, to help people in the rural areas where there are no banks. But what is there? Loan sharks. They're out there, and people are stuck paying. And also our veterans are stuck paying those kind of monies to just get a loan, to be able to cash a check. It's unbelievable. The Postal Service from 1911 to 1967 used to provide savings accounts, used to provide services that would allow people to borrow, and we can do that again. We don't need to be retrained. We already handle money orders and that. So this is another valuable thing to fight for, because we are also looking at putting more money in the pockets of those who don't have much as it is. So we're trying to work on that as well. But most important is that we feel that the consumers, we've been paying taxes for a long, long time on almost everything, but Wall Street gets away with murder. Now, similar to HR 1000 is also the bill, which is 1579, called the Robin Hood tax bill. And there's a campaign going on out there as well. And like the HR 1000, they also have language in there that allows to tax the transactions of major businesses, banks, big corporations, and the wealthy. So what happens when they do that? Basically, they're saying that the revenue that could be generated, and this is based on the bill 1579, could be $350 billion a year. That those monies for our government would be able to go to job training, living wage jobs, sustainable manufacturing, infrastructure, quality public education, housing, childcare, mass transit, climate change, ending global HIV and AIDS, and guaranteed health care for all. $350 billion. Obviously, they can do it. Now, the wealthy are saying, oh no, they shouldn't be taxed. But let's look at what that tax would be. The tax that they have right now in the Robin Hood bill is that the tax would be 0.5% on stocks. What does that come to? 50 cents for every $100 that is a stock trade. Now, could you think they could afford it? I'm sure they could. 1% on bonds and 0.005% on derivative speculation in currencies, commodities, or other trades. The tax is paid by the broker or the facility that processes the financial transaction. That would be involving the bankers, the brokers, and the wealthy. Are you kidding me? We can't get them to pay that amount. This is already going on in Europe. Europeans that are in that mode of purchasing stocks, they pay a percentage of a tax. This tax would resolve a lot of our battles and our fights that we've been trying to get monies for the government to be able to disperse them in our programs. So I am so excited about HR 1000, and like I said, that might be the bill that we can get in. We hope we can get something in because it does have that same capability of getting commodity, to be able to get something on the tax part to our wealthy. So number one, the other thing is that we have a problem with is getting people to be reactionary, getting people to put pressure on the congressional members. So I think where the problem comes in is that we have so many different coalitions out there, but nobody's getting together. And I think that's the whole key of this whole conference, is to try to start getting us all together. And I'd like all of those that are out there, don't forget, postal workers are on your side because it's all about jobs and getting our people employed. The other part that I feel that is something that we really need is that we need our congressional members sometimes to let us know who is it that we need to go persuade. What congressional member? And when we know what that congressional member, who that congressional member is, that we get our coalitions and put the pressure on them. Go to their home, put up rallies. We've got to fight. We cannot just sit back and just talk and talk because it doesn't get us anywhere. So we have to be revolutionary. This is the time. This is the time for all of us. So we can't leave anything to chance. We've got to get active, and we've got to get our young people to get involved as well. We have a program now in our union. We're trying to build up young people because they're just starting to come in. Luckily, they have a job for $15 an hour, but it's a sham because they really should be making the middle wage jobs that they're supposed to have, which would be $20 or $25. But the bottom line is that here we go again. It's another group, an organization, the Postal Service, that's trying to do low-wage jobs and take away the higher-wage jobs. So we're in this battle together. I just want to say that thanks for having me, but don't forget the postal workers out there are there with you, and we will join with you in this coalition.
Here, Representative Paul Tonko from New York, a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee. Sorry again, I keep forgetting to press the button. We have with us Representative Paul Tonko from New York, member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, and we're very, very glad to have you with us today.
My pleasure. Look, I know you have a very crowded agenda, and I will keep this brief. I wanted to come by. I had promised some folks in the audience that I would join you. I represent the capital region of New York and the Mohawk Valley of New York, the donor area to the Erie Canal, which gave birth to a necklace of communities dubbed mill towns. And those mill towns became the epicenters of invention and innovation because of the hard work of skilled labor. I stand before you as a grandson of immigrants who tethered their American dream in that given scenario. I won't let go of that wonderful experience. I think we need to empower the workers of this nation. I have watched the lopsided outcomes of management swimming in resources and workers living paycheck to paycheck. Unacceptable. It's not in accordance with the American dream. So I stand here in support of efforts. Hello, Congressman. I didn't see John in the front row. A great colleague with whom to work. But I stand for empowering the worker. If we have a strong working families opportunity, if we have a strong and vibrant middle class, we have encouraged purchasing power, that is what we need. We need confidence in the economy. I stand for measures like the Full Employment Act, the H.R. 1000 bill that you bring before our attention. I stand here strongly working to empower that middle class, and I want to encourage this wonderful partnership of the union community, the labor union community, the faith community, and progressive thinkers. That's how we will get this done. It's time to turn around what's been happening for the last 30 years, which has been an empowerment of the very few and a diminution of the great many of us. And we need to bring that back with progressive tax reform. We need to bring it back by closing loopholes that are enabling people to escape their social responsibility, and we need to invest in the worker and the working families. I look at what labor unions accomplished. They created strong working conditions, acceptable working conditions, a great remuneration for the work that you do. You saw benefits, you saw justice, social and economic justice brought by the folks who led this effort, by this voice of labor. And certainly I'm empowered by the thinking of pensions that people earned and enjoyed in their retirement years. We need to bring that agenda back. We have diminished the working families of this country. It's time to turn that around. I stand here to encourage you, and please count on me as a partnership in this entire agenda. Thank you so much.
Yes.
A new sponsor. We had it today? You said you wanted to add. Okay. Well, I repeat, full employment is the worker's best friend, clearly empowering to labor both individually and collectively. It is now my pleasure to move to one of the other pillars of the job advocacy, and to introduce to you Mr. George H. Lambert, Jr., the CEO and Executive Director and CEO of the Washington Urban League. The Urban League and other civil rights organizations have always had a dual agenda, both jobs and freedom. And the urban, sometimes that's forgotten, but it's really a dual agenda, and I'm sure that Mr. Lambert is here to talk about the employment, jobs part of that agenda.
Thank you so much. Delighted to be here. Again, my name is George Lambert, President and CEO of Greater Washington Urban League. I'm delighted to bring comments on behalf of Mark Morial, President, National Urban League, and also Chanel Hardy, Senior Vice President for Policy and Executive Director for the National Urban League Policy Institute. For the record, the National Urban League is a historic civil rights organization and urban advocacy organization dedicated to economic empowerment and historically underserved communities. Our organization was founded in 1910 in the city of New York, where our national headquarters is at. National Urban League has certainly improved the lives of tens of millions of people nationwide through direct service programs that are implemented in our local 95 urban affiliates around the country in 36 states and also in the District of Columbia. The organization has also conducted policy research and advocacy activities from our DC-based Washington Bureau. With that said, let me begin by certainly applauding the National Jobs for All Coalition for convening this briefing and also an opportunity to offer initiatives to solve the nation's ongoing job crisis. Here is the challenge, ladies and gentlemen. Despite the 5 years of at least being out of the Great Recession, we still yet recognize and still, I would say, realize that we are not yet in a great recovery. Instead, what I see emerging is still yet a great divide. Whether it is called income inequality, loss of social mobility, the eroding middle class, or the opportunity of inequality, at its core, it is a great divide between people who have homes, secure jobs, savings, retirements, and people who have only some, or yet worse, none of these. That is why the National Urban League chose the theme, Our Nation Unemployed, Jobs Rebuild America, for its signature annual publication, the 2014 State of Black America Report. It conveys the essence of the widening inequality gap between our country's richest and poorest citizens. Here's a challenge for African Americans. The Inequality Index indicates that the unemployment inequality between blacks and whites has widened. According to the most recent data in the May 2014, the white unemployment rate stands at about 5.4%. The black unemployment rate, which is almost doubles that, at about 11.5%. Perhaps the most troubling about this trend is the widening gap that has been so pronounced for women. Many women who have children and are the sole household income earners. The challenge is not massive unemployment, the challenge is not massive unwillingness to work. The challenge is massive or underemployment that undermines our nation's principle and economic mobility. With black households having just $6 in wealth for every $100 in wealth for white households, the situation is clear. The recovery has simply been insufficient. What we see emerging from the rubble is a state of black America in crisis, or yet, I dare say, a state of black America in severe economic crisis. Now, what is the National Urban League doing? The National Urban League has always stood for economic empowerment. Our latest endeavor underscores what we are doing, doubling down not only to raise our voices, but to do everything we can to help people achieve economic survival, sustainability, mobility in these very difficult times. We've launched our Jobs to Build America initiative in May 2013 as a solution-based approach to the nation's employment and education crisis. This $100 million 5-year effort is designed to reach job seekers, vulnerable youth, entrepreneurs, using comprehensive community development model. Jobs to Build America also includes grassroots advocacy focusing on federal legislation action to ensure a responsible fiscal plan for support for efforts to spur job creation. The National Urban League has recently championed bills issues including the reintroduction and the passage of the Jobs Act and also Project Ready STEM Act to certainly spotlight the urgency of job creation and the need to invest in education and skill enhancement of disadvantaged young people. We're also advocating for job generation legislation such as the Transportation Bill and the Hawkins-Miller Fair Minimum Wage Act. This act would raise the minimum wage to $10.10 for all workers with an index inflation thereafter. The increase in the minimum wage alone would result in almost 30 million people receiving a raise, nearly half of whom would be people of color, and a reduction in poverty. Even against the backdrop of the grinding gridlock and polarization, the National Urban League will continue our tripod of efforts to involve government, corporate, the nonprofit sector, in bringing about substantive change in our nation. At the Greater Washington Urban League, where I certainly have the pleasure of serving as president and CEO, we have boots on the ground providing entrepreneurial training, apprenticeship, and of course, job placement. In conclusion, progress is not easy and unfortunately too often is not timely in delivering a safety net of services for the most vulnerable in our community. History has taught us that protection and casting our fate against the wind, we can certainly not rely on that. I would just finally say to you again, that is why we certainly support this coalition. That is why we certainly want to look forward to working with you. Delighted to be here. Congressman, again, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. pleasure to present a colleague, Deborah Weinstein, who is a colleague because I'm a social worker initially, and I hope now too. And she is the executive director of the Coalition on Human Needs, and I like to think of you, Debbie, as a founder.
Not quite, but thank you very much. I really appreciate this opportunity. The Coalition on Human Needs is made up of advocates, of service providers, of faith groups, of labor, civil rights groups. We come together in support of the work that is being described at this conference, which is incredibly important. We are very angry. We have also come together through a campaign that we call Save for All, Strengthening America's Values and Economy for All. It has 4 basic principles. In any budget or deficit reduction plan that is being worked on in Congress, we should, number 1, protect, defend, expand services for low-income and vulnerable people. We should expand, create broadly shared jobs in this country. That is a key one of our principles. We should pay for these things responsibly, as has been described by Representative Schakowsky, Representative Conyers, and so many other champions, by asking people who can afford to pay, so by fair revenues. And we should seek savings where we can, from, say, cutting waste in the Pentagon. So those are the 4 principles that we have espoused and are working together on. And we join with you in trying to lift up especially the need to create jobs. We are right now shamefully and wrong-headedly failing to invest. We've just put out a table of more than 100 human needs programs, appropriation levels. We see cuts since fiscal 2010, cuts that are hurting us unnecessarily. Just 2 examples. Taking inflation into account, job training for youth and adults has gone down by more than 18%. And Youth Build, one specific successful program that brings young people into our economy, cut by 30% during that time period. These, as I say, stupid and wrong-headed and unnecessary. If we made the investments that we should be making and paid for it by the revenue increases we should be seeking. One special plea that I would make to you, we know that the public is also angry at the upper income corporate entities that are making out like bandits in this economy. We need to tap that and recognize that when we make our case for the investments we ought to make in jobs, if we do tie them to whether it's a financial transaction tax or many other examples of raising revenue, we strengthen our case because we tap into people's feeling that there is unfairness here, and we show clearly that there are wrong choices that are being made and we could be making the right choices. So I urge that we all work together in that way. I also say that while the public does get very well and is very angry about the unfair practices that are going on now in terms of favoring the wealthy, they are not convinced that there are clear-cut ways of creating jobs and that government can be a source for that. And that's where we have to work together. The excellent legislation that you've heard about, thank you so much Representative Conyers for being such a champion in this area. The public doesn't know the details, the story about how they could be helped. And they need to hear the story about how there are so many programs out there that are currently working to bring people in and give them the chance to get jobs. We need to tell those stories. We look for your help and to work with you to show the public that there are things that can work if we made the investments that are being called for in this room today. We could afford to bring those up to scale in the way that the nation needs. So thank you. We look forward to working with you.
It's now my pleasure to present the Reverend Dr. Rodney Sadler. He is an author, scholar, professor, and a leader in pursuit of social justice. He is particularly important in Moral Mondays, which are organized protests on behalf of the poor and the powerless, heard by the action of the North Carolina State Legislature and the governor. And you heard Philip Harvey also allude to the work on local job creation in, I believe it's in Charlotte?
In Charlotte, North Carolina, yes.
So, Reverend Sadler.
Good morning. How are we all doing? Can we all just stand up for just a second, please, and move a little bit?
We're on a very short schedule.
I know.
No seventh inning stretch.
There we go. No seventh inning stretch. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you today, and as a minister, I think I have to start by saying something about Scripture. In part, you know that the Bible has a lot to say about work. The creation story in Genesis chapter 2 states that there was nothing on earth because there was no one yet to till the ground. There was no human being to avad or to work the earth. Creation was incomplete until human labor was created. Amen? The promise in the garden begins with the creation of a human being to work. In the New Testament, before Jesus sends out his disciples to announce the kingdom of God, he starts off by saying that the ergates, the laborers or workers, deserve their fair compensation. You see, God is concerned about work. We are created in part to work. Creation is incomplete without our work. God is concerned about work. As we look at the Judeo-Christian scriptures, one story stands out to me that seems to be particularly relevant for today. Matthew chapter 20 has the story of the parable of the wealthy landowner. It's one of these that is significant because it starts off with the kingdom of heaven is like. It goes on to describe the kingdom of heaven like an earthly landowner who goes out to hire day laborers. First, he goes out at 9 o'clock and hires all the people he sees. Then he goes out at noon, then at 3, and then at 5 to hire more people. When he sees people standing around, he says to them, "Why are you standing idle all day?" To which they respond, "Because no one has hired us." After which he sends them to work in his vineyard. Now, you see, this parable really is about God. It really describes God as one who will welcome all people into God's community, right? And if I were doing a Bible study today, I'd emphasize the fact that this is about God's welcome of all people. But this isn't a Bible study. For our purposes, I want to examine the simile. See what it is that the kingdom of heaven is likened to. For our purposes, I want to focus on what the parable itself says, that the kingdom of heaven is like a jobs for all program. In the midst of this job for all program, God is likened to the creator God is likened to a wealthy landowner who wants to hire people. In essence, God is a job creator. Isn't that what we call him today? That wants to have full employment. So this story is a simile about a wealthy, generous landowner who cannot tolerate human idleness. His motto really is jobs for all. So the simile says something about God's desire to see all God's people work. And there's an underlying thematic in this simile about justice and fairness. Each worker, regardless of how long they work, received the same amount. Each worker received a denarius, a day's wage, an amount equal to what a worker needed to support himself and his family. Fairness, we might say to people that everybody should get the amount that they work for. But you see, justice says that everybody should get what they need to survive. I can imagine that each of these workers had a family at home to support, had debts they need to pay, had to pay the Roman government their taxes, had to pay their temple tithe. Each of these people was entitled to a day's wage so that they could survive. And this parable is told in part to say to those people who think, I worked more, I should get more. That ultimately, in God's view of justice, everybody desires, or everybody needs to have their needs met. Can you say a job for all at a living wage? Amen. This is what God's kingdom is like, a job for all with a living wage. We stand here today at a time when the American dream, unfortunately, has been threatened, unlike any other era. The hope that each person can do better than their parents is increasingly a vain hope. The desire that each person, through hard work and the sweat of his or her brow, can improve their station in life has been threatened. The desire that each person can work to make themselves a little bit better is unfortunately a challenge. Where I live in the city of Charlotte, we have one of the worst levels of social mobility in the nation. In essence, that means that if you're born poor, despite how hard you work, despite how well you're educated, despite how many job applications you put in, you are likely to die poor. The Charlotte story is increasingly the American story. For where is the social mobility in cities like Detroit, where people are now having their water cut off in mass amounts, 1,500 to 3,000 per week, because they can't afford to pay the exorbitantly high water bills? Where is the social mobility in cities like Camden, New Jersey, where the only jobs available to young adults are corner commerce, the drug trade? Where is the social mobility in cities like LA and Chicago, where we've traded in our union cards for gang colors? You see, the problem is that we need jobs. Say it with me. We need jobs. We need jobs to afford to live, jobs to secure a home, jobs to lead our lives as people should. We need jobs to afford health care, jobs to educate our children. We need jobs. We need jobs to allow us self-sufficiency, jobs to provide us with dignity, jobs to allow each of us to contribute to society, jobs to offer us a purpose. We need jobs. We need jobs in a nation that is riddled with more than 6.1% unemployment, where African American unemployment is usually about twice that, where we see in the city of Charlotte more than 6.5% to 7% unemployment. African American unemployment in some cities, some parts of our cities, is so bad that my friend Joel Siegel had a conversation with a young man, and he said, the only jobs in my neighborhood are to sell drugs. You see, we're forcing people into a tertiary economy. I like to call the primary economy the regular economy in which we work. A secondary economy is barter and trade. But a tertiary economy is when we move to an illicit means of survival. When we can no longer survive, we have to sell drugs, we have to sell our own bodies, or we sell other people's bodies in order to survive. We're forcing people into tertiary economies because we won't give them a space in the primary economy. I'm glad for job programs like HR 1000. Thank you, Representative Conyers, for what you've done. I'm glad to know that there are programs out there like the Center for Community Change that are pushing a job subsidy program in our city like Charlotte that offers a minimum subsidy to help hire people. If we get $10 million, we can hire 1,000 people and start to break this cycle of unemployment by getting people back to work. There are programs like this out there that can work, but we just need to get people back to the table to do it. We can't just sit around and complain that people are on the dole, people are on the government take. In North Carolina, I sat down with some of our legislators a while ago, and they said we had to get rid of unemployment, become the first state in our nation to get rid of unemployment benefits. We had to do this because there were far too many people just being lazy, laying around and living off of the government. Well, I said to them, well, why don't you make jobs so that they could actually work? The problem isn't that they don't want to work. The problem is that there are no jobs. Say it with me. There are no jobs. We've got to get people back to work. And we've tried to do it through the incentive program, right? We've cut the wealthy's taxes. We've given them money back. We supported their banks. We've done everything we could to make sure that they had the incentive to hire. But where are the jobs? I think we need to take a look at a different strategy, a different means, and maybe John Conyers' HR 1000 is the strategy we need to take so that we can make jobs for ourselves, because it's clear other people aren't trying to make them for us. We need to give the money directly to the people that will hire, directly to the people that need the work, directly to the people so that we can begin to work against this gross economic imbalance that's taking over our society. Unemployment is ravaging our society. And I'm sorry I keep talking to you in statistics, but I want to introduce you to a few friends of mine for a second. Is that all right? My friend Herb is a West Philadelphia native like I am, 57 years old, has diabetes, worked for years, more than 20 years, with the IRS working on our taxes. After he lost that job because of downsizing, worked for Home Depot. When they realized he'd risen in seniority, become a manager, and was costing them too much money, he was downsized again. He's been unemployed for a year and a half. He's a proud man, a man who's been working since he was 16 years old. And now he finds himself as the picture, the poster boy for what it looks like to be unemployed. You look in his eyes and you can see that he's lost hope. He's lost that will to strive and to struggle on, despite the fact that he's a hard worker. Unemployment today looks like my friend Ben. My friend Ben is a young man who's 36 years old, had a wonderful job as a salesman, worked with newspapers, worked with the Minnesota Twins, worked with all these wonderful organizations, but was downsized several years ago. Because he was downsized, he got depressed. Because he was depressed, he started to drink. Because he started to drink, he lost his family. Now, this father of two is living apart from his wife, trying to make ends meet because he can't find a job at a living wage. This is not just their story. This is the story of many others, like Ben, who's 50-something Dan, who's 50-something years old, who's struggling and also wrestling with alcoholism. Like Susan, who's a healthcare worker who can't find a job because of her own health issues. Like so many Americans who are out of work and unemployed, struggling today because, guess what, folks? There are no jobs. What I'm talking about here today is a matter of justice. I don't want charity. I don't want a government handout. People just want the opportunity to work. This is what justice looks like, the opportunity for people to be able to work. When I think about this as a matter of justice, I think the notion of justice starts with a redefinition. We need to redefine what it means in our society to be the unemployed poor. You don't know what I'm saying, do you? Far too often we look at the unemployed poor and we say they're what? They're lazy. We look at the unemployed poor and say they're not trying hard enough. We look at the unemployed poor and say that it's their fault, they're morally deficient because of their situation. But I want to give you a new definition for what the unemployed poor really are. The unemployed poor are people just like us from whom opportunity has fled. Let me make this clear. The poor are us minus opportunity. The poor are people who deserve change, who deserve an opportunity, who deserve a job. Why do we look at the poor as victims, as though they had the ability to change the system, as though they had the ability to control whether or not they lost their jobs? Why do we look at them as though they're victims when jobs have been shipped overseas? Why do we look at them as victims when the wealthiest are sitting on more wealth than they've ever had? Why do we look at them as the villains when they are at the mercy of a larger society? Maybe it's the wealthy that are the villains in this scenario. Maybe it's the business creators that are the ones who should be blamed for this scenario. Or maybe it's us, because we've allowed the system to exist without enacting reasonable, sensible legislation like H.R. 1000. Let me conclude by saying that as we think about jobs, we cannot think about jobs in a vacuum. Far too often we think about we have to work on jobs because if we get jobs, we'll get other things. But we can't really get good jobs without getting affordable housing, a safe environment, a quality education, affordable health care, voting rights, and a whole host of other attendant-related concerns. You know, we can have jobs and full employment without these things. I think slavery was a full employment system, wasn't it? But I think we'd rather have this opportunity to have these things working together. In essence, there are two reasons I want to suggest that we need to combine our efforts and work together to bring about a full employment society. The first is that, in all honesty, there's just not enough people just talking about jobs. We need people talking about jobs to come together with people talking about the environment, to come together with people talking about voting rights, to come together with people talking about women's rights, to come together with people talking about labor rights. And by then, we can form a coalition that's able to make that change. Amen? Amen. And we also need people to come together because, in essence, there's something I learned with this movement I work with, the For Together Moral Monday movement, something that Dr. Barber says all the time. Forward together, not one step back. In essence, the point is, if we don't move forward together, we will fall backward and we will fall apart. Let me end by just reminding us of a quote from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He said in his Christmas sermon on peace, "Every human being is a child of God, made in God's image, and therefore deserves to be respected as such." I think a full employment economy begins with this notion of the valuation of each and every human being. You see, each and every human being is valuable. Why? Because they represent the image of God. Every human being deserves dignity. Why? Because they are an expression of the image of God. Every human being deserves the opportunity for full dignity because of the divinity that exists within them. Every human being deserves a job because a job is not a privilege in the midst of this world. A job is a human right. So every human being deserves a job. Amen? Amen. Amen.
The green. There you go.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sadler. You know, we're also victims because we lose what the unemployed could produce. The housing, the parks, the trees that need to be planted, the services, those are all lost, literally thrown away as a result of all of this unemployment. And we think about the Depression when our whole infrastructure was improved, when we had the arts, we had all kinds of repair, building of parks, building of airfields, et cetera, et cetera. We are losing what they could give us, and in also greening the economy, and leading us toward an environmentally friendly society. So it's now my privilege to present Representative Frederica Wilson of Florida. I think I would like to visit her office in the Cannon office building, because I understand she has a poster in which she counts how many days Speaker Boehner hasn't brought employment legislation to the floor. I think I'd like to visit after this, after I have a little time. She's a leader in the full employment caucus. She has her own ramped up version of the President's bill. She's a co-sponsor of HR 1000. And I just love her hats, and I'm really glad she's wearing one of our hats today. Thank you. I would like to say that we are going to go with Witness Wednesday at 12:30, but I do want to have time to have some of the grassroots people from all over to talk and to essentially give their message to the record, so we'll discuss how we're going to do that toward the end of this very full morning. Exciting.
It's such a pleasure to be among people who care about jobs and who care about employment. There's nothing more happy for me today, but I only have a minute because I'm going to the floor now because I have a tweet campaign going on and I want you to join me. Every day between 10 o'clock and noon, I want you to tweet a message to the President of Nigeria and end it with the hashtag Bring Back Our Girls, or the hashtag Frederica Wilson Bring Back Our Girls, or Rep Wilson Bring Back Our Girls, because these girls have been stolen, kidnapped, and we don't know where they are, but someone knows where they are, and we're not going to stop until they find them. But I want you to know that I think that the mantra of this Congress should be jobs, jobs, jobs. I don't think that any day should pass in the halls of this Congress that someone is not discussing jobs and creating ways that we can put people to work. No one ever thought that jobs are the real way to close the deficit. If we put everyone to work, every single solitary person to work, they will pay taxes, they will spend money. If they spend money, the businesses will flourish. They will take vacations. If they take vacations, our economy will flourish. And then when people who are flourishing, they pay taxes. When you pay taxes, the government flourishes. People get off food stamps. They don't need unemployment compensation. There's so much to close that deficit. So what I want to leave here today with all of you is the mantra of this Congress should have been from the very beginning, after the economy crashed, jobs, jobs, jobs. And no matter how the president tried to pass the American Jobs Bill, they wouldn't even bring it to the floor. So I picked it up in 2013. I have hundreds of sponsors on that bill, and I'm not going to stop until Mr. Boehner brings that bill to the floor. So you have a good day, and thank you so much for including me in this forum. Thank you.
I love your other mantra, which is jobs are the real deficit.
Absolutely, that's the real deficit.
Okay, it's now a pleasure to introduce Chris Horton from the Worcester Unemployed Action Group, which calls for an end to the direction of our nation's wealth into the hands of the tiny minority. They want a government committed to real jobs with fair pay, proper benefits, and long-term security. So I give you Chris Horton.
Oh,
be up in just a moment as soon as I get these out. I want people to look, when you get this, I want you to look at the chart on the bottom of the page. And if you get something that has a front page, it's the chart at the bottom of the back page. And I want you to think about what it is that you would call this. We have an unemployment group that's been in existence now for 2.5 years. It is funded by small donations from friends and in-kind donations from local unions and my Social Security check. We just got our first $1,000 grant fund. When we started, we were one of 4 grassroots unemployed organizing groups around the country that I knew of. Now there are 3. It is something whose time has come, but people with money and resources need to make it happen. The unemployed movement in the 1930s, I know about that because my father was involved. And I thought, we got a depression. This is what happens. And I watched. I was working on foreclosures and we were doing stuff around every year about the unemployment extensions. It wasn't happening, so we decided, okay, we're going to do it. We threw ourselves into it. We have a wonderful group. It's met every week for 2.5 years at least. It has a core of 10 unemployed people who participate, 50 or 60 who participated in one action or another in the last year, a mailing list of about 350 unemployed and 150 supporters. We've had impacts on the fight for extensions, on the fight to save the state unemployment system. We've had 2 big forums in McGovern's district around job creation. We've participated in 5 election cycles now, including 2 special ones, in which we brought forward our program and got the candidates' positions on them and participated in forums on this and local job creation efforts. We've had a huge impact for a little local group. But we need to be part of a national movement, and it's become quite clear that that is not going to happen by itself. It didn't happen by itself last time. It's not happening by itself this time because people with money and resources aren't doing it. Now to get back to this thing that I just handed out here, that chart down at the bottom, that is people employed age 35 to 34. You can run these off for different age groups. You can run them off for different demographics from the BLS site. This one is just everybody, men, women, black, white, age 35 to 44 who have jobs. You see the collapse between 2007 and 2010. And then look at going across there. What is the right word for that? Is that a recession? Is that a recovery? I heard someone say it. What is it?
Depression.
That is a depression. We are in a depression, and no one is saying it. The people in this room mostly aren't saying it. The news media aren't saying it. Our best friends in Congress aren't saying it. When we got together to work out the program that we wanted to bring to our candidates for state and national offices, when we worked through what it was that we wanted the candidates to commit to, we had all kinds of issues around job creation and ways of going at it, around making the unemployment system work, saving the food stamp program. This is a big one for us. But the number one issue that a room full of unemployed people decided on as our absolute top priority was demand of the politicians that they stop talking about 6%, 7%, 8% unemployment rate, because it's a lie.
everybody in this room knows it. We need to start saying it. We need to stop talking about 7%. It's not 7%. You can argue about whether it's 7% or whether it's the 13% you get from U6, or what was it, 17% Logan came up with, or the 24%, which we think is probably closest from the government shadow statistics site, which does not have a political agenda, by the way. It's there for economic modelers. You can argue about how you define who's unemployed, but you look at this. The jobs aren't there. That's the bottom line. They're not bouncing back. This is not a recovery. This is a depression. And we need to start saying so, and we need to start demanding that this be treated just that seriously. There were going to be, I had 4 unemployed working people lined up to come with me. All 4 dropped out. The one who had the skills that we really needed and the enthusiasm we really needed for organizing got a job interview. The others, struggling to get by on part-time and temporary jobs, one got an offer of a week's work. She had to take it. One got an offer of a few hours work that he couldn't refuse because he needed that job, even if it was only 10, 12 hours a week. Another one got an offer of a couple of days' work. He had to take it. This is what we have now. They would not be counted as unemployed by our government. But these people, former professionals and former construction workers and former supervisors and skilled workers, are struggling to just barely survive at the very margins of our economy. And that is not shown in this official rate. They're counted as employed. So what I'm asking you to do is change your conversation. We need to change the national conversation about what's going on, and starting with us. Thank you.
I'm very glad to meet you. I met you on the phone a lot as you talk about organizing, but I'm glad to meet you in person, Chris.
Thank you. Likewise.
All right. I'm now very happy to present Kevin Bradshaw, who's been active in the labor movement in Memphis for a few years, and he's been employed with Kellogg's for over 13 years, and a member of BCTGM. Could you say what that is?
That's Bakery, Confectionery, Tobacco, and Grain Millers International Union.
Yes, he's actually president of the Bakery Confectionery. I got the letters wrong. Tobacco Workers and Grain Millers Union, Local 252G. And I think I'm going to let him tell you about what he's been doing.
Thank you, Trudy. Yes, my name is Kevin Bradshaw. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. I represent the working class. I am unemployed. I've been unemployed for over 9 months. We've been struggling in Memphis with an illegal lockout from the Kellogg's company, which we're awaiting a favorable ruling from federal courts right now, sometime this week, end of the month, hopefully. But we have maintained our dignity. We fought back. We fought back because they wanted to take away the things that we as working class Americans have worked for and built this whole country with. We fought back because we wouldn't allow them to illegally create a 2-tier wage system to lower the wages, take away insurance and health benefits, as they did to us the day they locked us out on October 22nd, 2013 at 7 a.m. So we have, since then, we've been in court, in and out of court. We're waiting a favorable ruling from the judge. And since then, the company has always said that they wanted to end and settle the lockout, but they haven't made any contact with any of us. So we're waiting a favorable ruling. And ongoing that, we have built a coalition called COPPER, which stands for the Coalition for the Organizational Protection of People and Equal Rights. And that's pretty much what you've heard everyone up here talk about today, about how we go out and we get people to come together. I worked for the Postal Workers Union. It put me through college. I worked for UPS, the Teamsters, put me through college. And we've come together with all the different labor unions in the city of Memphis, different religious faith-based organizations, low-wage worker organizations like WIN, Workers Interfaith Network, which I'm a board member of, and a lot of different organizations, and we're trying to come together and build this coalition, not only in Memphis, but to go nationwide as well as statewide, to be able to bring people together and have a voice for the voiceless, and let them realize and understand that we don't have to settle for what companies are trying to do, and be able to change politics in America, let alone whatever respective state or city you live in, to put people in office that put the people first. And if we don't go back to putting the people first, then we're going to always have what we have right now, which is like a diminishing expectation of jobs, where you take away good paying jobs and bring them back at a lower rate, and everyone's starving, and you have to take whatever is available at that time on the table. So until we come together as people, working people, not black, white, whatever, people, because we are people, everyone's people. If you don't see it that way, then you're in the wrong place anyway. But until we come together as people and try to take back and win what we've lost so many years, then we're going to always have a never-ending struggle of lower income jobs and creating a new class of what we call the working poor class. Until we come together, things will never change. We stood together, 226 me and my members, against the company that wanted to take away things that we have worked with the company since 1958, and we've never had a strike or any type of a work stoppage based upon the company not working with the union. And we took a stance, and the company still to this day will not own up to the mistake that they have made. They made $14 billion last year in profits, and to say that they need a lower wage in Memphis, let alone, is absurd, because if you change the wages in Memphis, you have to change them everywhere within the Kellogg's network all over the world. But they took advantage of the poor economic structure that's already in the city of Memphis and to try to use that to their advantage. They're mad because they're number one. They're mad because they pay good wages. They're mad because they have good insurance and benefits. So they feel like, why should we do this in Memphis when no one else is doing it? So they've locked us out and spent over $43 million to keep us locked out, when it could have been just cheaper to allow us to work through negotiations. But it's just another sign of corporate greed. Our CEO makes $8 million a year, and that's not enough. That's almost $3,500 an hour. His pension and everything is guaranteed to 2020, even if he dies today. So until we get back on top of things and supporting like HR 1000 and creating full unemployment, we're going to always be struggling as people and as a nation, as a country. So I just applaud the National Coalition for Jobs for All and everyone who's here, and hope we can stand together and come together. And you can go to www.coppercoalition.org if you're interested in becoming a member or affiliate or partner, and see how we've tried to structure this, and you have any input or like to take it back to your respective cities or states. That's coppercoalition.org. Any information you want on that, you can contact me through that. Thank you very much.
Minutes, introduce Jessica Scheider to talk about Witness Wednesday, but there are people here who are advocates of the disabled and so on and so forth, and for the record, I'd like you perhaps for a few minutes to introduce yourselves. Any people here from other organizations that we should know about? Would you just introduce yourself? Yes.
My name is Sheena Foster, and I'm the Executive Director of the Workers Interfaith Network in Memphis, Tennessee. We are an affiliate of the Interfaith Worker Justice, and we organize and mobilize communities of faith and labor on behalf of low-wage and immigrant workers.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
I'm Cynthia Gerald. I'm the Federal Policy Director for Gamaliel, which is a national faith-based community organizing entity. I work out of Washington, D.C., but our affiliates are in 17 states.
I just read that book on the Civil Rights Act of '64, and I know how very much the faith community did to break that filibuster and get us that law, so very glad to have you with us. Anybody else?
My name's Mark Dudzik. I'm the National Coordinator of the Labor Campaign for Single-Payer Healthcare, and we just see an intimate connection between the fight for jobs and the fight for healthcare justice.
Yes. Anyone else? Don't be shy.
Yes, I'm with the Leaders in Energy Group, so talk about coalition in terms of environmental issues that our chapter mentioned. I thought that was excellent. And we are going to be having a happy hour if you'd like to drink beer and talk about these issues. July 17th here in Washington, D.C., we're going to be discussing, is it time for a new economic period? Thank you.
Yes, and we are ourselves as very connected to the environmental movement and green jobs. Service jobs are largely environmental friendly, et cetera, et cetera. Anyone else?
The earth, there won't be an economy.
Absolutely, it is the fundamental right, even more than jobs. Yes. Anyone else? I'm sure there's some other people we should know about.
I'll just introduce myself. My name is Isaiah Pohl. I am the online communications director at the Campaign for America's Future. We have been longtime champions of a full employment agenda. We will make that a major focus of our work over the next few months. And so we are happy to partner with you and the other people in this room
to
advance that.
Anyone else? Yes.
I'm Andy Feeney. I'm on the steering committee of the Metro DC Democratic Socialists of America. We have been in favor of HR 1000, and Representative Conyers worked for a long time. And I believe some of our members are probably going to be talking this afternoon about HR 1000.
Yes, there is. Please join us for this afternoon session when we'll have an opportunity to hear even more from people from various places. Bill will talk more about full employment. Yes, please.
My name is Bob Schlegelberg. I work with Inspire Food Service and their You Inspire training program. We work with young adults on the mental health spectrum, as well as U.S. veterans here in the city. U.S. veterans being chronically unemployed, homeless, substance abuse history, felony records, so the hardest to employ here in the city. And I would like to mention Washington, D.C. is a little bit of an outlier, that there's more jobs in the city than qualified people to fill it. So we'll be back tomorrow with one of our U.S. veterans to speak a little bit more of the barriers that he faces. And I'll leave a few business cards here if anybody wants to speak more on this table.
Anyone else? Yes. I
My
see
name
two
is
else.
Who's that?
Go ahead. I see two else.
Oh, okay. My name is Larry Bresler. I'm with Organize Ohio, a statewide organization that works to promote and assist grassroots community organizing in Ohio. We sponsor an organization called Noble Northern Ohio for Budget Legislation Equality, which has been working on budget equality issues in Ohio.
And we'll hear from you this afternoon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jason Miller with the Franciscan Action Network, and we're proud to be here in support, and we represent about 50 different Franciscan organizations and congregations across the country, and I am a Toledo native, so it's always a pleasure to see Representative Kathy.
Okay, is everybody, no shyness, okay, yes.
Hi, I'm Shadia Henson. I'm here representing the Great Panthers, and I just want to say we're so proud to be a sponsor of this event working for social and economic justice and peace, and we're happy to be here.
I'm happy to meet you. I've met you on the phone. Our conference calls around the country. Logan, anybody else? Have I missed anybody?
If we don't have your contact information, please, there's a sign-up sheet outside if you haven't signed up. We are about to do an action with the people fighting for unemployment insurance. They do Witness Wednesday, where they're bringing folks together to tell the stories of unemployed people who have been affected by the terrific cuts in unemployment benefits that have gone on. And we're going to go, hopefully as many of you can, join us. We are going to go over there and sort of have a little picnic lunch. We have sandwiches and chips and drinks out in the hallway. And we're going to go over there, and a couple of our members are going to read some of those stories and join that. And we encourage everybody that can. Then we're going to come back here to begin a strategy session this afternoon. And we'll have a strategy session in this room tomorrow morning as well at 10 o'clock. So we really appreciate everybody coming out. So we're see this as the beginning of mobilizing the country for jobs, and we're going to be really putting the really going out there and building this and drawing the links to bring people together, because it's through unity and working together that we can really change this equation, because it has to happen.
When are we reconvening in this room?
We'll be back here at 2 o'clock. We do this on a shoestring. We're very low on cash. We threw this together with a lot of help from a lot of people, and we have sandwiches out there if you'd like to take one, but we would appreciate a contribution to help pay for the cost of the food anyway. So.
And I apologize for not getting Jessica Scheider on the program. She's over there organizing the event. I suspect maybe Representative Barbara Lee, who is sort of hosting it, is probably over there already too.
Sure.
and very much with us on HR 1000 and the Full Employment Caucus.
So who should we follow so we get there?
Yeah.
We'll go together, let's go.
Thank you, everybody.
Well, let's
Could I get you on video for just a minute?
Who are you?
Oh, well, Isaiah Poole, campaign.